Hi, today is a Sunday, April 27th, 2025. I'm sitting on a desk, sitting at a desk in my dorm in Oryodong Station area. This is my company's dorm. It's a 16-story building, and there are about 200 residents, I think, or more. And I'm paying 250,000 won, or about $200 per month. So it's subsidized by my companies. I only pay for gas, utilities such as gas, water, electricity, and maintenance and security guard. Today, I am going to read this interesting article. There are many people worrying in America because they are in fear of being deported, regardless whether they are a U.S. citizen or not. So that's strange. So let's find that out. Why that's the case? This article is from the Washington Post, and the title is Three U.S. citizens ages 2, 4, and 7 swiftly deported from Louisiana. The cases have renewed concerns that the Trump administration's expedited deportations are violating the rights of both citizens and non-citizens. Today at 6:06 p.m. ETT. Police and ICE, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers gather for a briefing before an enforcement operation on January 27th in Silver Spring, Maryland, by Emmanuel Felton and Megan Vasquez. Three U.S. citizen children from two different families were deported with their mothers by Immigration and Customs Enforcement during the early hours of Friday morning. One of them is a 4-year-old with stage 4 cancer who was deported without medication or the ability to contact their doctors, the family's lawyer said. According to their lawyers, both families were taken into custody while attending routine check-ins this week in New Orleans as part of the Intensive Supervision Appearance Program, which allows individuals to remain in their communities while undergoing immigration proceedings. Lawyers say the families were taken to Alexandria, Louisiana, a 3-hour drive from New Orleans, where they were prevented from communicating with their family members and legal representatives, and then put on a flight to Honduras. The cases have renewed concerns that the Trump administration's expedited deportations are violating the due process rights of both citizens and non-citizens. I don't know how much more of a blatant or clear constitutional violation there can be than deporting U.S. citizens without due process. Here, not without a due process, but it says without due process. It's more conceptual, right? Without due process, said Alana Odoms, executive director of the ACLU of Louisiana, especially with some of those citizens being the most vulnerable of all vulnerable children, and not just any children, children with medical conditions that are dire, right? Here, without due process and that are dire. Children with medical conditions that are dire. The U.S. government has never released data on how many U.S. citizens have been wrongfully detained or deported by ICE, but independent investigations have revealed that ICE has arrested, detained, deported, and issued detainers requests to local jails to hold a person in custody for thousands of citizens since the agency's creation in 2003. Lawyers representing the father of the 2-year-old U.S. citizen who was deported, identified as VML in court documents, filed an emergency petition in the Western District of Louisiana on Thursday, seeking her release. The child was put on a plane to Honduras the next morning before the court opened. Hours after the deportation, U.S. District Judge Terry A. Doughty, a Trump appointee, issued an order expressing his concern that the girl had been deported against the father's wishes, while stressing it is illegal and unconstitutional to deport U.S. citizens. The government contends that this is all okay because the mother wishes that the child be deported with her, wrote Doughty, who has been lauded for his conservative rulings in the past. But the court doesn't know that. Doughty said a May 16 court hearing to investigate his strong suspicion that the government just deported a U.S. citizen with no meaningful process. The order did not call for the girl's return or recommend any recourse for the family. According to court filings, the girl had accompanied her mother and 11-year-old sister to the immigration appointment in New Orleans on Tuesday morning. About an hour later, her father, who had driven the family into New Orleans for the meeting, received a call informing him that the family had been taken into custody. That night, the girl's father was allowed to speak with her mother for only a minute before an ICE agent ended the call, lawyers contend. Lawyers say the man did not get the chance to speak to his partner or a child again until after they were released in Honduras. Both of these mothers were held without the ability to speak with their co-parents and the guardians of their children while making this incredibly personal and difficult assessment about what was best for their children, said Gracie Willis, the lawyer for VML's father. Justice Department lawyers argued that the man claiming to be VML's father had failed to prove his identity to the government despite requests that he present himself to ICE agents, adding that he had also demonstrated considerable hesitation regarding the inquiries into his immigration status. The man's lawyers included VML's birth certificate in their filings, which shows she was born in Baton Rouge, and lists the names of both her mother and father. The government is not disputing the immigration status of any of the three children. Instead, officials contend that the undocumented mothers opted to take their citizen children with them back to Honduras in their court filing. Justice Department lawyers attached a note they say was written by VML's mother saying that she was taking the child with her to Honduras. It is common that parents want to be removed with their children, Tricia McLaughlin, a spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security, told the Washington Post. Willis says ICE's refusal to allow the women to talk to their lawyers meant there was no way to verify whether that was true in these cases. We have absolutely no idea whether they ever actually did give consent for their children to come with them, or if they did, under what kind of duress. And what other options were presented to them, Willis said. Immigration during Trump's second term, Trump's aggressive crackdown. Right? Trump's aggressive crackdown. Since returning to the White House, President Donald Trump has made immigration enforcement one of his top priorities. He issued a series of executive orders that include declaring a national emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border, deploying hundreds of troops there, and attempting to end birthright citizenship for the children of non-citizens. And birthright citizenship, a move that a federal judge has temporarily blocked. The administration has also largely closed access to the asylum process, suspended refugee resettlement, and ended temporary humanitarian protections for about 350,000 Venezuelans who sought refuge in the United States. These policies have created widespread panic and confusion in immigrant communities across the country. More resources diverted. Trump has promised to deport millions of immigrants who are in the country illegally, and administration officials have directed U.S. immigration and customs enforcement officials to aggressively ramp up the number of people they arrest from a few hundred per day to at least 1,200 to 1,500. To meet these goals, the administration has enlisted personnel from the FBI, U.S. Marshals, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and the Federal Bureau of Prisons. To quickly increase ICE's detention capacity, the administration has begun to send migrants to the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base in Cuba. Pushback in the courts. Advocacy groups and others have filed lawsuits over many of Trump's new policies. Officials in 22 states, plus D.C. and San Francisco, have sued over Trump's birthright citizenship executive order. Lawyers for the American Civil Liberties Union, the National Immigrant Justice Center, and others have challenged the Trump administration's asylum claim that there is an invasion on the border to justify summarily expelling migrants without giving them a chance to apply for asylum. Well, this article is rather short, but it gives us a lot of insight into Trump's immigration policies, right? He wants to end birthright citizenship for the children, and also he wants to increase the arrest and deportation of the illegal immigrants out of the country, and most of them looks like without due process, right? Without due process. So that's it. Thanks for listening and take care. But before I go, I would like to go over what I stored, right? Without due process, children with medical conditions that are dire. Without due process, children with medical conditions that are dire. Well, that's it. Thanks for listening and have a wonderful Sunday. Bye-bye.